Hello everyone, I'm Soma Mazumdar.
And I'm Orod Semsarzadeh, and welcome to Kanban Lab podcast. In each episode, we'll pick a common question and dive into a different aspect of Kanban, exploring its principles, practices, and applications, and answering that question.
Our goal in this podcast is to demystify Kanban and help listeners understand how it can benefit their teams and organizations through addressing the common misconceptions, clarifying concepts, and answering questions about Kanban. Hey Orod, how are you doing?
I'm very good. How are you, Soma?
I'm good too. How's Melbourne today? Is it sunny or cloudy?
It is sunny but cold.
Well, Sydney is same, sunny but cold. But I also like how we also provide weather update with
I
our
know.
podcast.
Yeah, in the future we can go back and see how was the weather.
Yes, that's true.
All
Oh,
right. So, what have you heard recently about Kanban that surprised you?
well, it keeps surprising me on a daily basis. But then, um, this would be something that you might have heard a lot that Scrum doesn't work for us. Let's do Kanban. So
Oh, yeah.
what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I've heard that a lot, and I think, most people who say Scrum doesn't work, let's do Kanban and let's do it from next week or something. They look at Kanban as a framework.
Mm,
They think that, because Scrum doesn't work or whatever reason, from tomorrow, we don't need to do sprint planning. We don't need to do all the, Scrum ceremonies, and we can just start doing some sort of Kanban, right?
mm,
While Kanban actually is just a method that help you to manage your work.
mm.
And as its core, Kanban is a change management approach,
Yes.
right? So yes, I understand maybe Scrum doesn't help some company or some team for whatever
Mm,
reason,
mm,
or maybe Scrum helped them, but now they want to improve and they want to take it to the next level, and maybe Scrum, doesn't really help them, and they want to
mm,
try different approach, maybe more flow-based approach like Kanban.
mm,
Um, but they need to be mindful that Kanban is not a framework, it's not something that prescribe you how to work from tomorrow.
mm.
So basically Kanban say, okay, what is the problem you have today? Right? So, okay, Scrum doesn't work. What problem do you have?
Mm.
Right? And then let's see what we can do to help that and improve that. And
Yeah.
yes, it takes time. Over time, maybe from true Scrum, you become true Kanban and 100% flow-based approach.
Mm.
But, it takes a while because you can't change something overnight.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Yeah.
Yeah, it does. Well, okay, that's a really good point that you put it out there. And whenever I hear this, I was actually thinking, let's take a step back
Mm-hmm.
and find out, like based on our experiences, based on our observations, why doesn't Scrum work? And one
Mm.
of the main, based on again my own observation, and this is totally my opinion, uh, it doesn't work because Scrum focuses a lot on the roles. It actually relies a lot on the role to talk about or even think about improvement. So
Mm-hmm.
when we look at different organizations in Australia, what I have found out that the product owner roles are not actually empowered how it is
Mm-hmm.
being suggested and recommended by the Scrum guide. So when
Yeah.
that happens, the team doesn't get the I mean get to live the actual value of Scrum. And
Mm-hmm.
if you look at Scrum as a framework, it has really good values. But again, another point, if you ask people what are Scrum values, there will be very, very less people who could actually tell you the 5 Scrum values.
Mm-hmm.
So that's another thing, again, my opinion, that this is one of the reasons why Scrum doesn't work to its full potential, because we are not getting everyone to experience the shared accountability to achieve
Mm-hmm.
their outcome or goal. We are actually relying too much on roles like, the product
Mm.
owner, the scrum master. And the second thing is that the roles are not as empowered as they should be
Mm.
when they are helping the team to get to a level. Now, on the other hand, when someone decides that, okay, let's talk about Kanban, or even let's practice Kanban, the first step is that everyone has to agree on continuous improvement.
Mm-hmm.
And this is when Kanban will actually work. Because as you mentioned, Kanban is not a framework. It's a way to do things, it's a
Mm-hmm.
different approach. It is an accumulation of different principles, practices, and values that comes together and help people to achieve the outcome they want, and also gradually improve their system. So
Mm-hmm.
this is another very important part, that agreement on continuous improvement is the key.
Mm-hmm.
And leadership at all level, I keep saying that about Kanban, is that it's not relying on 1 or 2 roles to talk about improvement, or to, improve the system. Everyone needs to own this. Everyone needs to show leadership at their own level to make this work. So when people have
Yeah,
that agreement, then Kanban is magic. What
that's
are
right.
your thoughts?
Well, I think people, when they talk about approaching, different approaches, Scrum, Kanban, whatever, and when they say, okay, Scrum doesn't work, let's do Kanban from tomorrow, they don't consider the factor of human,
Yes.
right? So what they say, if, for example, if we work with bunch of robots,
Mm.
then what they say might be applicable, right?
Yes.
So from tomorrow, we completely work differently.
Yeah.
But the thing is, we work with a group of human, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And different, these people, they have different background, they have different experiences. Some people had good experience with the Scrum, some people had bad experience with the Scrum. Same with Kanban, some people have different interpretation of Kanban. I think that's the whole point of this podcast, right? So make sure
Yeah.
that people have better understanding about Kanban and clarify, those kind of concepts. And when you work with human, you need to take into account that change is difficult and time
Yes.
consuming.
Yeah.
And you can't just press a button and say, hey, everyone, from tomorrow we work completely differently,
Yes.
right? Because, people get used to those ceremony, they used to, how Scrum works. And as you said, there are different responsibility in the new Scrum guide. They changed role to responsibility. So rather than we have one person to coach the team, so it's
Yeah.
a responsibility of
Yes.
someone or a
Yeah.
group of people, right?
Yeah.
Um, so I think if people think about human and the complexity of human and understand that change gradually can happen, then they won't say that, right? They
Yes.
say, okay, which part of a Scrum doesn't work? Which part of a Scrum
Exactly.
we don't like it, right?
Yeah.
And how Kanban can help to
Yeah.
improve it, right?
Yes.
Is this a few episodes ago, we talked about, lots of meetings and ceremony, right?
Yeah.
Is this the
Yeah.
problem? So
Yeah.
having, running those ceremonies is the problem, or we run them, but they're not effective. So what is
Yeah.
actually the problem? Estimation is the problem. Planning is the problem. The time box or sprint, is the problem, because this is very common. People come and say, We work with legacy application, legacy product, legacy systems, and slicing doesn't work. We can't build and test and deploy and everything in 2 weeks,
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
Even if we do it, it has no value. We need to do lots of rework, right? Because
Yes.
we don't have test automation, we don't have CI/CD, we don't have this, that, right? Um, because so if that's the problem,
Mm.
how Kanban can help? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because Scrum actually it's a really good framework to show and highlight the problem.
Exactly.
And a lot of people don't like to see those problems
Problems.
because
Yes.
solving those problems time consuming and they're not ready to solve those problems.
Yeah.
They're not ready to invest on those problems,
Yeah.
right? And they think if we increase the length of the sprint, it can solve the problem, right? Or if we switch to Kanban from tomorrow, all the problems we
Yeah.
have will be resolved just magically. You know what I'm
Yes.
saying?
Yeah.
Which most of the time, these kind of solution doesn't really help. Maybe hide the problem, but I don't
Yeah.
think necessarily solve the problem.
Yes, I totally agree. And I also agree that, people would be on in the complex domain of Kinevin by Dave
Mm,
Snowden. And this is something that most of the organizations and the leaders of the organizations fail to understand. Like implementing any framework just, blindly will never solve the problem anywhere
mm,
because frameworks are not uh it's not like, hardcore, like it's not written on stone that
mm.
it is recommended. But then you really, really have to understand your own context. You have to understand the people, the culture in that team or the organization to make anything work. So same goes for Scrum. Scrum is like the framework is intentionally kept incomplete so that people can fill it up with the things
Mm-hmm.
that make sense for them. So if, like all the events in Scrum doesn't make sense, you can definitely optimize. But then
Yeah,
for that, you have to review them. That's
that's right.
where that continuous improvement mindset comes in, where you are actually going to review things and, like have a chat about it that, okay, whether it's working or not. And
Mm,
that's where Kanban, when you make things visible, when you have explicit policies about things, helps people because you mentioned something which is really, really important. And I totally agree. The more complexity is added to everything because now people from different culture, different background can work together in a team.
mm-hmm,
In earlier days, this wasn't the case.
mm-hmm,
I This reminds me, I was having a chat with someone, like yesterday, where I
mm-hmm,
was just telling that as a coach, I'm not here to like, transform business because that's not my expertise.
mm-hmm.
That like there are businesses running from a long time and they know how to do it.
Yeah.
What I can do is that highlight all these complexities so that they can take this into account when they are thinking of a solution. Because now, when we talk about globalization, when we talk about
Mm,
distributed team, there are someone, working from Europe, someone working from India, someone working from Australia, and all working together in the same team, but
mm-hmm.
different time zone, different culture, different background, also different way, of interpreting the message.
Yeah.
So when you have something agreed and you make that explicit, that okay, this is how we will do this, and everyone is on the same page, that makes it easier. That's
Mm-hmm.
where you can actually start talking about where are the gaps and where can we
Exactly.
improve.
Yeah, absolutely. So, back to what you said earlier about what is the problem. So, you can use lots of Kanban practices and tools to help Scrum, right? So, for
Yes.
example, this Kanban board that it's common now and all the Scrum team use it, and I don't think anyone can think, you know, can imagine to work without visualizing the work and having the board. It's never
Yes.
been part of Scrum, right?
Yeah.
But they borrow it from Kanban, right? They can use other practices of Kanban. Another one, again, very common is this. working agreement, right?
Yes.
That's that's basically what Kanban called it, make policies explicit.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Um, so I don't think they necessarily needs to change the framework and stuff like that, and break everything down and build it from scratch. They
Yes.
can use some of these Kanban practices and principles
Yeah.
to help them to solve the problem they have. In fact, some of these Kanban principle, for example, manage the work and don't manage worker, that kind of thing. So this one in particular helped
Mhm.
me myself a few years ago to become a better Scrum Master,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Because a lot of Scrum Masters, they force people to follow Scrum,
Exactly. Yes. I
ceremonies
agree.
and practices and whatever values, stuff like
Yeah.
that, just for because Scrum said, right?
Yeah.
I think they need to have the mindset that Scrum or any tools that we have, we need them to help us to do whatever we
Yes.
do, do it better. We
Yes.
don't work for Scrum, we don't work for Kanban, we don't work for the system. We build the
Exactly.
system to work for us. I
Yes.
think if people be mindful of that and be aware of that, that yes, you can change the system, uh, then they don't come and say, okay, Scrum doesn't work, let's do Kanban. Because
Yeah.
to me,
And
this is an invalid statement, right? And
yes.
also, it's against um, Kanban because, and I like to, focus on the evolutionary approach of Kanban. That
Exactly.
Kanban never said break everything, throw everything out, start
Yes.
from scratch, right?
Yeah.
It's one of Kanban principle. Start from what you do,
Yeah.
right? And then evolve over time,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
That's right.
So my suggestion to people that when they say, okay, when they think about like Scrum doesn't work, let's do Kanban, then maybe rethink about it and think and see, what what is the problem they have and how Kanban principles and practices can
Can
help them to
help.
solve this problem.
Yeah.
At some stage, they might say, okay, we don't want to do iterative, we don't want to work iteratively, we want to focus on the flow of the work, that kind of thing, and become a
That's okay.
fully flow-based approach and fully Kanban. That's good,
Yep.
but you never know,
Yeah.
right?
Exactly.
So I think I repeat this one in all episodes. Everything is hypothesis until it happens,
Yes.
right?
Until you try it out and
You
prove it
try it
to
and
be. Yeah.
yeah.
And very well said, Orod there. Like it's an invalid statement.
Mm,
Uh, and I when I think about it, there are so many things that's similar between like the Scrum practices and the Kanban practices because we talk about WIP limit in Kanban, and one of
hmm
the Scrum values is says focus, where
hmm
you are actually focusing on a time boxed event and you are not pulling anything else. So that's basically your WIP limit for the whole team at the
That's
same
right.
time,
Yeah.
applying at the same time. The other Scrum value says respect, which is so much needed when you work together as a team because when you respect each other, you will always, like try and understand each other's perspective. And
Yeah.
that also shows like leadership at all level. And this is something I believe that, like the message from this episode that we should be giving out to people is that find out what's the problem with Scrum.
Mm,
And if you want to try out a static for that, go for it. Where you can actually start with finding out that why people are not happy or not satisfied in their
hmm
current way of working. What's
Yeah.
the problem? What's the pain point? And is your stakeholder, are they on the same page?
hmm
Do you think that they are also not satisfied with your current way of working? And if so, why? Try to empathize and think from their point of view.
Yeah.
Then
And even recently, Scrum.org,
yeah,
they've added a new certificate. I can't exactly remember what it's called, but
yeah,
it's Kanban. They mix, they use Kanban practices and principles with Scrum, and they even certify people. So yeah, they definitely, people can definitely use Kanban with anything, including
Anything.
Scrum.
Yes.
And I would suggest to always think about people and think about the complexity of people and make
Yes.
sure that we don't want to distract people, right? We don't want people just keep thinking about frameworks and WIP limit and this and that.
Exactly.
We need these things to help people to do their work better, to increase the
Yes.
focus, reduce context switch,
Yeah.
all those kind of things.
And if meetings are the problem, and this is a real example from one of the program that I was actually coaching, they optimized their meetings, like the
Mm,
Scrum meetings, because they had the same issue that there are too many meetings. So there's no rule which says that you cannot optimize meetings. You cannot
mm,
combine things to achieve the same outcome because it's not meetings, right? Like Scrum has events, and every event has a certain outcome that you should be achieving through that. There's a
yeah,
purpose for that. When you understand those purposes, you are free to combine events to get the same, if you're getting the same outcome, there's
mm,
no harm in combining meetings to get the same outcome. And same goes for any framework, any practice, any values, any principle. Try and understand the purpose it's trying to achieve. When you
exactly.
understand them, you can
Yeah,
apply it in your own context to make it suitable for you, and not
yes,
the other way around, that you have to
yes,
follow anything blindly, and that never works. You cannot
absolutely,
copy paste. And I
exactly.
Yes, I think that's why, like
Yeah.
Spotify, or
So
even Spotify says that do not copy paste Spotify model anywhere else because it worked for us initially in our context. So understand the context before
that's right.
applying anything.
Yeah. And another thing I wanted to mention is that what is the purpose of Scrum or Kanban or whatever, Spotify model or Safe or anything like that? The goal, the purpose is not to just follow what they said. The purpose is to deliver something to solve a problem for the customer,
Exactly.
right? And they all try to make this happen better,
Yes,
right?
absolutely.
And we do whatever that help us to deliver what customer wants when customer expected to get. Yeah.
Exactly. So, Orod, let's
Yes.
talk about the takeaways from today's episode. So, what is the first one?
I think the first thing is Scrum doesn't work for us. Let's do Kanban is an invalid statement.
Yes.
Always look at people as human. They're not just
Yes.
resources. They're not robots. They can't change or work differently from tomorrow or by running, a few days courses.
Yes.
People have different, experience. Peoples are very complex and always look at the problem, see
Yes.
what doesn't work for you or which
Yeah.
part of Scrum doesn't work for you, and see if Kanban practices and principle can help you to, you know, uh, resolve those problems.
Yes. Yes. Looking at the problem, understanding the problem, and looking at your own context is very important
Yeah.
to understand why something is working or not working. And also having the continuous improvement mindset where you are reviewing whatever
Hmm.
framework, whatever practices you are using or practicing at the moment. I
Hmm.
would say it is always a good way to just review them
Yeah,
periodically to understand that if things are working, because when people change, the culture change, the complexity of an environment changes.
that's right.
So something that was working before might not work anymore because of certain changes in the environment. So
Exactly.
look at
And
that to
also,
understand.
if something works in this company, it doesn't necessarily
It
works in
will,
another
yes,
company. Yeah.
exactly. Copy pasting framework is never a solution. It's always about understanding your own context and then, getting the framework or the practices to help you to achieve the outcome that you want to achieve.
That's
So
right.
that's another point and takeaway. Uh, Also, the change management principle in Kanban that can help
Hmm.
you in any situation when you understand the meaning behind it. where like
Yes.
start where you are, and you don't manage people,
Hmm.
you manage the work. And that's why
Yeah,
we all are here, because people are smart, intelligent, they are skilled, so we don't need to manage them. It's
absolutely.
our job to manage.
And we evolve gradually.
Yes, experiment. So test and learn is the key. So if you want to try out something, try it out. It shouldn't be something that, you're changing overnight the whole thing. Do not go for those kind of changes.
Yeah.
So yes, start
Perfect.
small and then test and
Cool.
learn.
All
Well,
right. Thanks
yeah,
everyone for listening. Thanks, Soma. It was a
thank you,
good
Orod.
chat.
Yes, it was.
All
Well,
right.
thanks everyone. Take
Thank
care.
you. Bye.